This program is essentially based on my own story. I was in corporate America for 30 years for a couple of companies, and then transitioned into being a consultant. And a few people have asked me over the past years, how did I do this, that, and the other thing to get where I am? And what came out of it is this presentation. I'll introduce myself in a bit more detail in just a moment, but do want to let you know, there are a couple of caveats just as we go through this program. And so what that is, I am not an attorney. I am not an insurance rep or insurance salesman. I'm not a tax professional. So we will be talking about a couple of concepts that will be important for you to consider that you may need to speak with the appropriate professional. But all I'm a friend talking to a friend. I'm happy to tell you my story, what I've learned along the way, but there will be a few times, and I may even point it out a little later in the program, when it will just be here's a friend talking to a friend, but you will need to speak with a professional for your own situation. So quickly about me, and I know a couple of you that are on the call or we've met before. I'm an information technology consultant, and this is my company, Princeton Technology Advisors. And as you can see from the logo, that's my headshot. And we're kind of a general IT company. Our clients tend to be small businesses and not-for-profit organizations, smaller organizations. We do website work, whether creating a new website or maintaining and supporting websites. We redesign them if the client wants that. We also do managed services, so small and mid-office with a few or more people. We can help put in the virus protection, support the servers, do backups, all that. And then there are other technology projects that I run for my clients, and they vary from software implementation and others, and governance and such. So I do help with that when requested. And I'm also very active, and I'm a leader in the job seeker support community. And I think community is very important to that. So I'm the executive chair of a group called the Professional Service Group of Mercer County. We meet each Friday morning, virtually now. We used to meet at the Princeton Public Library, and it's free to attend. You just come to the website, event calendar, and then look for the connection info, and you can attend any Friday meeting. Also, I'm on the boards of the Breakfast Club of New Jersey, which meets on the second Saturday morning of the month, the Career Support Group in Hamilton, also the third Saturday of the month. Now both groups are meeting virtually, and I'm a co-facilitator at another group called New Jersey Job Seekers, which meets on Tuesday evenings at 7:30, also virtually. And if you'd like more information about those, I'll be happy to connect with you a little bit later. My contact information is one of the last slides. So let's talk a little bit, though, about the gig economy and really what is it. And what happens is companies now are beginning to contract more regularly with independent consultants or temporary workers for a specific project. So rather than bringing on full-time staff and moving them from project to project, they bring on the staff when they're taking on the specific project, and that project is called the gig. And so gig workers, often they're independent contractors, or they work for a contract firm. They could be employees for contractors. They could be part-timers. They could be temporary, maybe even flex jobs. So, they're here to do a project, work on them, and then to get out. But for a lot of us, it really is going to be the future of work. A lot of us came out of full-time employment working for a company or a number of companies over the years. Now, granted, COVID, the pandemic, has put more of a strain on the local economy, but more and more, especially as we have gotten a little bit older and there have been different disruptions in the marketplace, companies are shifting more to project-oriented work. So we should be thinking about this. And most of this presentation is really from the perspective of being an independent consultant, even if it's, self-employed or whatever you want to call it. We'll go into detail. If you work for a consulting company like a Deco or Robert Half or one of those, you're employed by them. So your relationship is W-2 employee, and then they're putting you on one of their client projects. And the pros and cons are the same, mostly the same, except the tax and the side of it is going to be a little different. And we'll highlight those. So what is a consultant? It's really someone who provides skills, expertise, services, advice to others, and you get paid for it. So you're doing it professionally. And you're working typically under a fixed project and on a fixed contract for that specific project. Basically, what you are is a hitman. And these are New Jersey's most famous hitmen. They go in, they do the job, and they get out. And that's what we do as consultants. We're brought in for our expertise and our specialty. Now, there are some differences between being an employee and being a consultant. If you haven't consulted or been independent, you're probably not as familiar with those. I'm going to show you some of them right now. And so certainly as an employee, you typically receive benefits as part of your compensation, paid vacation, medical and dental and all that. But as a consultant, you don't typically get paid benefits. Now, it may be a little different if Adecco or Robert Half hires you, employs you to put you on a contract. They may offer you some of those benefits or they may not. But typically when you're independent, it's not part of your contract. I'm not sure if you knew this, but the employer, when you're employed, pays half of your FICA taxes. So that's the part that says FICA or Medicare, Social Security, the employment taxes. And so typically as a benefit, the employer pays half of that. When you're independent, you pay the whole employment tax, and it's 15.3%. So the employer was paying 7.65%. You typically, as an employee, paid by a paycheck. At the end of the year, the tax year, you get a W-2. But as a consultant, you're usually filing an invoice or submitting an invoice. And at the end of the year, you're not getting a W-2, you're getting a 1099, typically 1099 MISC, a separate form. It's very similar to the type of 1099 when you had gotten interest or dividends paid to you, miscellaneous income. Okay. And also the taxes are not taken out of the invoice, but they are by the paycheck. So your income and payroll taxes are typically paid out of your paycheck. And then at April 15th at tax time, you submit a tax return. And hopefully you get a refund or you've balanced evenly. You're not going to, hopefully you don't pay a lot. But as a consultant and independent, you're actually paying for the first 3 quarters estimated income tax based on your income. And then in April or the end of the year, you're filing your final tax return as well. You still may get a refund, or you may not. There are very limited tax deductions available to you as an employee. There actually used to be more, but the tax reform for 2018 got rid of a lot of them for independent employees. Things like home office and other expenses that you need or that you take advantage of. But as an independent consultant, you have a lot of tax deductions that are potentially available to you. So for instance, we're doing this virtually right now. I have my desktop PC and my monitor. When I bought those were tax deductible. I have a camera on the top of my monitor. When I bought for that was tax deductible. And my printer is tax deductible. Even part of my home office is tax deductible. To understand if it's applicable to you, you would need to speak to your own accountant. But typically these types of deductions are available. So whatever your income is, I'll make up a number, you made $60,000 as a consultant. Before you pay your income tax, those expenses are tax deductions bringing down your taxable income. Again, speak to an accountant about that. So certainly some differences between an employee and a consultant. So what's in it for the client, the people that hire us? Why do they consider bringing us on board as a contractor instead of as an employee? Well, for one thing, easier to hire and fire contractors. You generally don't go through HR. You generally don't have to, especially when it comes to termination, if that has to happen, you don't have to file anything with the state. Sometimes the employers have to file termination notices with the state. There's no unemployment insurance that's being paid for those people. You don't go through the legal or HR department for that. So it's really a much easier process. There's no long-term commitment. You can define long-term any way you want, but generally when you come on board, you are told, well, we have this specific project, we have these goals, and we expect it to be completed at a certain period of time. And then when it's over, it's over. Now, if they extend it, that's between you and them, but generally no commitment. Now, you can say with employees, there's no commitment either. New Jersey is an at-will state, but generally there's an expectation that you'll be there longer than the consultants as an employee. Generally, the hiring company is really looking for an objective and seasoned team member. And hopefully they do that with hiring as well, but it's not always the case because when people hire employees, they do take a slightly different approach than when they hire consultants. A lot of times when they hire employees, they want to make sure this is someone that they can work with 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, because it may be long-term. A consultant, they don't quite think of it the same way. And generally, they're looking for skills the employed team does not have. And you would say, well, shouldn't they do that with consultant as well? And it's not necessarily the case, because when they employ people, what tends to happen is, as I mentioned before, can you be here? Can I work with you? Can I tolerate working with you is almost what the mindset is. And if there are some skills you don't have, they'll train you. But as a consultant, they really expect you to come in with the skill set. They're hiring you on contract for your expertise. And in the end, it actually saves them money. Even though the hourly rate tends to be higher, there's no benefits, there's no training, there's no personal time off, none of the other things that they tend to pay for employees. So that's another reason why they like having consultants instead of employees on certain circumstances. And what's in it for you? So this is the other side of the coin. Well, at the very least, it fills a resume gap. Unfortunately, there is unemployment discrimination in the job market. And what tends to happen, unfortunately, is if there's you who's currently unemployed and another candidate vying for the same position, and it's just down to the two of you, if the other candidate is currently employed and you're currently unemployed, there's a good chance that what will happen is they'll pick the other person. Hiring managers tend to pick employed people ahead of unemployed people. Statistically, it's just what happens. Usually, you're paid more than the employees, especially on an hourly basis. So as a consultant, you're paid more. And the reason why is you have other expenses like the benefits and personal time off that's kind of built into the salary as a benefit, and it's not available to you as a consultant. And you have other administrative tasks as well, like sending in your invoice and timesheet and all that, including time needed to look for your next gig. It does post as a current position on LinkedIn. On your LinkedIn profile, in order to have what they call all-star or 100% LinkedIn profile, you have to have a current position, not a recent position, a current position. The end date says present. So it might be January 2020 to present, no end date. If you don't have a current position with no end date, you cannot have 100% LinkedIn complete profile. Why do you want that? The reason why is LinkedIn does have its own kind of search engine algorithm, similar to Google and others. So when a recruiter is looking for someone and you fall in that category, you're hoping to come up near the top of the list. The 100% complete profiles come up first, and then the lower profiles that match come up behind those. So you need a 100% complete profile to come up higher in the search results. It also gives you a variety of experience on your resume. There are certain industries that will not hire people that are not from the industry. But what will happen is they will bring in a consultant for the expertise. It could be the software or the management or whatever it is, even if they're not familiar with the industry, because they need you for a specific skill. And now on your resume, you have a much greater variety, potentially, of different experiences. And also, companies tend to be willing to contract for older staff while they're hiring younger staff. There is age discrimination in the hiring market. It's unfair and it's illegal, but it goes on and it's hard to prove. We all kind of know it, we just don't talk about it. But what happens is employers want your expertise. They want your calmness under pressure. They want the experience that you have. And while they may not hire you, they will bring you on under contract. It's a much more manageable expense. One of the reasons why companies do hire younger staff, get them on the books, is because of the cost of benefits, specifically healthcare. If the average age of the employed staff tends to go up and is higher, the medical expenses do go up. The healthcare expenses do go up. So this way, by bringing you in as a consultant, they have you, but you're not on the books. So it becomes more cost effective for them, bottom line. And also, if you're only interested in contract to hire, but you don't want to be just a consultant, and a consultant and contractor, we're kind of using those terms interchangeably. But sometimes you'll never find out about a contract to hire position because it's not a contract for hire position until you're there and they just have to have you. And they just realize how important you are. So be open to consulting. because it may also ultimately lead to an employed opportunity with that same company. Now, you may be kind of scratching your head. Well, some of that may be a good idea, but are there reasons not to be a consultant? Well, there are lots of excuses for not being a consultant because a lot of us are used to being employed full-time as an employee. So I'll go through a couple of them, but I'm really going to poo-poo each of them along the way. For one is, we've all heard that you're not treated as well as a consultant as the other employees. And some people are very sensitive to that. They really feel that they're just not treated as well as other employees. And maybe you've worked for a company where you've had consultants in the organization and you saw they weren't treated as well. Maybe they weren't invited to the holiday party or the summer picnic. They weren't getting all the memos about the project, whatever it was. But actually, you may be treated better than the employees because of the value that you will bring to the organization, your expertise, your specialty. In 2014, I was on a contract for actually 3 days. It was a 3-day contract in suburban Chicago. And the company actually flew me out. We bought the ticket on a Friday, had to be there on a Monday, so they paid full price for the ticket. And flew me out to Chicago, and I got to the company Monday morning, about 10 o'clock in the morning, I got there. And met the chief information officer, that's an IT guy. I was put into the office 2 doors down from him, and it was a very nice office. And then I was told who I need to talk to about the project. And I went to the very first person late morning, introduced myself, and I said, please come to my office because we have to talk about this project. And the woman kind of got angry. She said, do you know how long I've been looking at that office? I've been looking at that office for several weeks now, ever since the person left. You're here one day, you get that office. That's very unfair. So she was kind of bitching a little bit at me, not me personally, but she just kind of vented. So sometimes you are treated well. You get the good office. So be aware, it can happen. You know, as a consultant, you might get into the project. You might actually ultimately be unhappy. And so no one likes to be unhappy. So that's why they're afraid to be a consultant. Well, I'll let you know, you might actually be unhappy as an employee as well. So unhappy is nothing to do with consulting. And actually, if it turns out that you are there for a few months and you are unhappy, you'll likely move on. And the joke is on them. They paid you, you got good money, and you moved on to your next assignment. Don't worry about it. I know with one employer in 1999, I was all excited about working for this new company. I wound up not fitting in there. You know, I'm not going to go into details why. It just wasn't a good fit ultimately. I lasted 4 months and I moved on to another place anyway. So even though I was employed, I was unhappy. But then I was at another place for 12 years where I was very happy. There are unpaid administrative tasks as a consultant. For example, you may have to file timesheets and submit reports about the status of what you're accomplishing. And you might have to submit invoices, all a little bit different than being an employee. We just get your paycheck at the end of the month. But you know, you build that into your hourly rate. You add a few extra bucks every hour, so you kind of get compensated for the time that you're not in the office, but stuff that you have to do. So that works out very well. You know, I need benefits. A lot of people say, I can't work as a consultant. I need benefits. I have to have a full-time job. And when I hear that, and I certainly empathize with those people who tell me that, and I ask them, well, how long are you willing to wait? Well, as long as it takes, they'll tell me, because I have to have benefits. All right, that's very important. How are you paying for your benefits now? And it's almost always the case when they need the benefits, they're paying for it out of pocket. Whether it's a savings account or whatever, or they're working part-time to earn a little extra income, they're paying for benefits. It's not necessarily the case that a spouse or a partner is providing them, because if they were, they didn't need them. So here's the thing. If you need the benefits of being employed, be a consultant, get those larger hourly rates, and buy the benefits from the income that you're generating rather than from taking it out of your savings account. So it's really very positive that way. You can buy the benefits. It may only be short term. I may not get a lot of money out of it. I need a long term. I need to work a bit longer. So I did a really rough calculation that if you had a 6-month contract and you were paid $50 an hour, which is probably on the average low side, you'd still earn about $50,000. Now, that's before taxes and expenses. You know, that's your main income. So, which meant if you were on a 12-month contract, that's $100,000. How would you feel about having $100,000 income in a year? So it can actually be quite beneficial to be open-minded to consider working as a consultant. Now, right now, we're talking about some of the pros and cons. We're going to get into some of the logistics of it in just a moment. So, any questions right now or so far?
No.
Anything at all? Yep, and you could, I guess, just unmute yourself for a moment if you have a question. And there'll be other places, intermissions a little later on. There's another one in the middle, and another one at the end. Or you can go get a bagel sandwich or a cup of coffee, I guess. Okay. All right. So, yeah, just be back on mute while we go through this. But if you have a question, just unmute yourself. I'm not able to see all of your faces during the presentation. So if you raise your hand, I may not see it. So just, interrupt as needed. Let's see. Is there anything in chat? As I look real fast. Come on, show me chat. There's participants, chat. Where she learned about the seminar. Very good. All right, so let us move along. So now that I piqued your interest and you're thinking, yeah, maybe I should be a consultant. Let's get into some more of the how-to and logistics and kind of the meat and potatoes of becoming a consultant. Do I need my own company? So in my case, I do have a company. Princeton Technology Advisors actually is a limited liability company. We'll talk more about the types of companies in just a moment. And the answer is no, you don't need a company in order to work on a 1099. Now, the employer may require it, but you don't need it just to be a consultant. Okay. But what if my client does require that I work for a company? Well, there are a couple of things you could do. Find a colleague or a friend who already has their own company. See if they'll hire you, and through their company, place you on the contract. Now, by the way, if you reach out to me and ask me if I will do that, I will not do that. I don't hire employees, and I'm not interested in developing that kind of structure within my company. But you may be able to find someone who would be willing to do that for you, someone who has an employee, a company with employees. Another thing you do is you can find a consulting company and ask them, will they hire you? So the Robert Halfs, the Adecos, those sort of companies, they're constantly placing consultants on contract. Now, do be careful when you deal with them. Nothing illegal or inappropriate. They tend to take a very high percentage of the hourly rate. 50% is not unusual. And you may be kind of scratching your head as why do they do that? Well, often they're doing the recruiting as well and spending a lot of time and effort looking to fill a position, and they actually may not fill a position because another consulting company may get it. So the way they kind of cover that is their rates tend to be, they tend to take a bigger piece of the salary. But when you talk with them and say, I'm bringing you a client, see if that's negotiable. They may reduce it a little because it didn't really cost them much. They're entitled to make a little bit for the effort, but not that big piece that they're used to. There's also a type of business called a split placement company. And I used to be a hiring manager, an IT manager for a company. And when I brought in consultants who did not have their own company, I used Top Echelon, company listed there. Another one is called NPA Worldwide. What these are professional employers. They're not really the traditional consulting company because they're not out recruiting. They're only in place to be your employer. So your client will actually engage in a contract with Top Echelon or one of these companies, then hire you and put you on the books. And so that way there is a company between the client, the end client, and you. And a lot of times the reason why clients want this is they want to be able to prove you are not an employee, you're not entitled to employee benefits. They don't have to take taxes out and report to the IRS in the same way as they would with an employee. They want to keep that physical separation, and one way to do it is have a company, that they're hiring the company, not the individual. You can form your own company. Just takes a few weeks. I formed an LLC, limited liability company. For most consultants, that's perfectly fine. And one thing you will want to get is what's called an EIN, Employer Identification Number. It's 9 digits. It's like a social security number, but it's the identifier for the company. And you get that as part of the process also when you form your company. And we'll go into that in just a moment. Now, there are different kinds of business entities in New Jersey. One is called a sole proprietor. It's essentially not really a business. I mean, you call yourself a consultant, but you haven't formed or registered with the state of New Jersey, and it's perfectly fine. This is basically the formation of, I don't work for a company. You're hiring me directly as a consultant. There's no organization documents. There is something called personal liability. So if the scenario might be you're working on a contract at an employer or company, and something that you did caused a financial loss. Maybe you made an adjustment to the books, or you brought the system down, or whatever it was, and they lost money and they want to sue you to get that money back. As a sole proprietor, your liability is unlimited. They go after you personally. You do need to talk to an accountant and attorney about this, about truly what liability is. And we're going to talk about errors and omissions insurance a little later. And then the income just goes in your regular income tax return. It goes on Schedule C, which is miscellaneous income and expense. You may be filing this already with your tax return. So that's a sole proprietor. You're not registered with the state. The next is called an LLC. And here I have it as a sole member. There are a few types of LLCs. For this discussion, let's just call them the same. You do register with the state of New Jersey. And you can have partners and you can have employees, and that's all fine. And by registering with the state of New Jersey, there are some formation documents. And liability can be limited. So if the person who does the work on the contract causes some sort of problem and loss to the client company, your personal liability may be limited. But in all three of these, even with the C and the S Corp, let's talk about what limited is. This is America. We sue everybody. So if you had a subcontractor working with you who actually did the work and they caused the problem, they may be liable personally, and then you as the LLC who placed them on contract would have a limited liability, which means the most they can come after is your business. But if you put yourself on the contract, you have the potential to be both personally and professionally limited, but personally unlimited liability. Just be careful. And that's how it was explained to me. I think that's really a summary, and you would need to speak to other professionals like attorneys and tax professionals and insurance professionals to be sure. Again, the income shows up on your Schedule C. They give you a 1099 at the end of the year, and it counts as miscellaneous income. And then there's the C Corp and the S Corp. These are corps. At the end of your company name, you'll put INC. At the end of my company, I put LLC. And they're used for different reasons. It's not really clear to me pros and cons of why you form one over the other, but I'll give an example of how a C Corp could be beneficial. So for one thing is they have the corporate liability could be limited. And they also have this concept of what's called double taxed, and you have to speak to your tax professional to see really what it is. But essentially, all your income to the corporation gets taxed. But of course, there are expenses like salaries and business expenses. And then you pay yourself a salary, even if you're the only person in your corporation. And so you do have a corporate tax return, and you do have a personal tax return for the income that you paid. This is the common case where does it pay to form the corporation in a tax-friendly state like Delaware and Nevada, and then remain living in New Jersey? You have to work that out with your tax professional. But here's kind of a funny thing where you can actually save a little bit on taxes in a C Corp. Let's say you're making some pretty good money in the corporation. I'm just going to make up a number, $250,000. Well, you do have to pay yourself a salary, and you cannot pay yourself an unrealistic salary, like $1, just to save yourself the income tax. If you're doing the work, you have to pay yourself a market value salary. So let's say it's $100,000. So you pay yourself an income of $100,000, but the company made $250,000, which means it's $150,000 that you're not paying yourself as salary. Remember that 15.3% employment tax. So you're going to pay 15.3% on the $100,000. You're not going to pay that on the 150 that's left over because you're not paying yourself that as a salary. Then the next thing you can do is pay yourself at the end of the year a corporate dividend. Corporate dividends are not salary. They are income. They are subject to income tax, but you will not pay the 15.3% payroll tax on the dividend. Now, that's a very simplified example. And again, you will need to speak to a tax professional on your specific scenario, what makes sense. And you can start as an LLC, and then as business gets bigger, switch to a corp later on. So these are some of the simpler forms, basic forms, but oversimplified version of some of the common business entities in New Jersey. And by the way, if you are in New York or Pennsylvania, another state, these are available as well. And probably some of the tax laws might just be a little different from state to state. So how do you start a business? Well, here's a website. And when you get the slides a little bit later, that link is a live link. So I will make these slides available at the end of the program, and you can go to this business.nj.com. It's kind of their one-stop shopping so you can start and grow your business. They have startup guides and resources, FAQs, all sorts of things. Pennsylvania, I know, has a website like this, and New York does as well. I just haven't posted them here because I expected to do a New Jersey-based presentation. But you can go to this website in New Jersey to get information for starting a business in New Jersey. So when you think about it, now that you're going to be a consultant and maybe forming your business, how much should I charge? What's a reasonable rate? And a lot of people want to know that because is that relevant to forming their business? It may be if they can make some realistic good money for it. Basically, you charge market rate. Market rate is typically what your customer would pay for your type of consulting service. Your type of consulting service might be different than my type of consulting service. I can't tell you what your rate should be. You're going to have to kind of research that on your own. And if typically a consultant like you receives $100 an hour, then the market rate is probably somewhere between $75 and $125 per hour, depending on the nature of the work. You may charge a little bit more or a little bit less. When I started out, I was lowballing my rates just to get a couple of good customers and start developing a brand. And then I brought my rate up over time. So that's not a bad strategy as well. If you want to kind of figure out what you need, this is kind of a simplified way of figuring out what you used to get paid in your old company. So you take your salary, you divide it by 52 weeks. Then you divide it by 40 hours, and now you'll come up with what your hourly rate would be. Now, you also have to consider other costs that you may have and expenses, your benefits, your admin time, your personal time off, all sorts of other things that you feel you should be part of your compensation, and start bringing your hourly rate up from there. But this might be a way of starting away. One thing might surprise you when you do this calculation, the salary divided by 52 weeks and 40 hours. You might be surprised at actually how low in the employed world your hourly rate was. But that's, of course, they were giving you the other benefits as well. Here's a website that gives some more guidance on it. Again, this is a live link. So when you download the PDF version of the presentation a little bit later, this link is clickable. Of course, if you take a screenshot, you're welcome to as well. But on this website, founded.com, they actually have a web page on how much should I charge as a consultant. So this may be helpful to you in this vein as well. Let's talk about errors and omissions insurance. This is basically liability insurance that will pay if you did some sort of something at the position that caused a loss for the company, an unintentional loss for the company. And we'll talk about lots of little nitty-gritty details about this, but you will need to speak with an insurance professional, specifically your own insurance professional, because you may have some insurance already, like homeowners and automobile insurance, that may or may not provide certain types of coverage, or they may be available as riders. But basically what errors and omissions insurance is, it's a professional liability insurance that protects the company, your company, your workers and other professionals against claims of some work negligence or some inadequate work. And so that's what it is. If your client's company feels that you were negligent causing them a loss, they may seek to get reimbursed, made whole from you. Okay. And who gets sued in America? Everybody. It's just the way it is. Our legal system is open so that people seeking protections under the law are able to get that. And so sometimes when there's a lawsuit, you might get pulled in even if you were not directly involved. And until it all gets sorted out, you may have some expenses associated with that as well. But typically, your company will get sued and your workers will get sued. And if it's the same person, you get all the lawsuit against you. Now, do I need errors and omissions insurance? Well, it depends. What is the level of risk that you'll be undertaking? And what is your tolerance of risk? You know, maybe if you have a lot of money in the bank account, you can keep it set aside and be self-insured. Or maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you're involved in very risky operations. Maybe you're involved in less risky. For instance, if you are an IT person and you're very active working on the company's servers, what's the likelihood of you bringing down the server? If you brought the server down, would they lose income? Or are you on projects that don't get deployed and don't until they're done and don't impact the business? Maybe they're lower risk. You have to make that decision. I can't really guide you that way, but speak with your insurance professional, speak with your legal professional. And then there are other things that you just need to be aware of. Let's say you're mostly working from home and you get injured walking down the steps in your home while you're working. Will your homeowner's insurance cover you? Or will they say, no, that was a home office and we don't cover business expense? I don't know that that is or isn't the case. You need to speak to your homeowner's insurance. Another thing, let's say as part of your business, you order something online like printer paper and stationery, and the FedEx or UPS driver walks to your front door to drop the package off, slips and falls and hurts himself. He now wants to sue you because you have a slippery front step or something like that. But he's carrying business packages, not personal packages. Will your homeowner's insurance cover that? It's a question to ask your homeowner provider. And again, you're working from home mostly, but maybe once a month you visit your client at their office. And it's about a half-hour drive, no big deal, and you can get there easy enough. But you have a car accident on your way. Is that covered by your auto insurance? Auto insurance typically covers commutes if you're driving to and from work or the train station, that kind of thing. But do they cover this sort of travel? They may or may not. Speak to your auto insurance agent. So you need to speak with them just to be clear and understand what you do and don't have coverage for, or if they can add riders and what that cost will be. Sales tax. This is my most fun part. This is my most fun part of this presentation. Do I need to collect sales tax? Now I can tell you in general, most business services that we do are not taxable events. So this may not be an issue for you at all, but it was something that because I had the potential to resell computer hardware, I investigated it for myself. And it was really kind of a fun presentation because I did actually go to a seminar by the state of New Jersey Treasury Department. It wasn't complicated, but did go to speak with them. And here, yes, only for taxable products and services. You do need to collect sales tax for taxable products and services. Now, I would imagine it's in all states, but for today, we'll talk about New Jersey. So in the seminar, I raised my hand and I said, what are taxable services? What are taxable products? Products are taxable unless New Jersey says they're not. That's what they told me. Very nice lady, very friendly, answered all the questions. This was her answer. Products are taxable unless New Jersey says they're not. And then I said, how do you figure this stuff out? Well, the Treasury Department website, and it's changed a few times, so I don't have the web page here any longer. But it's easy to find. Once you get to the page, there's all these links for all different types of products, and if they are or are not subject to sales tax. And so you just have to look up and see if you must collect sales tax. And then it's also, who are you selling it to? Are you selling it to the end user, or are you selling something to someone who's going to then sell it to the end user? If it's the end user, that may be subject to sales tax, but if it's a middle person, it may not be subject. Just be clear on what it is. So products are taxable unless the New Jersey says they're not. As an example, food is not taxable. Go to the supermarket, food items are not. But bottles of soda are, because that's not considered food. It's another kind of treat, ingestible treat. And then they told me services are not taxable unless New Jersey says that they are. And again, I raised my hand and the nice lady said the same thing. Well, we have another webpage that talks about services and which are not taxable. And so some services are taxable and some are not. So remember, food is not taxable. Food preparation is taxable. Go to a restaurant, they collect the sales tax. And when they prepare the food, they also tax the food. The food is not taxable unless it's prepared for you. So there's things like that you just need to be aware of. But most business services tend not to be subject to sales tax. In New Jersey, you can file quarterly or monthly online, and it's based on a dollar amount. So I believe it's $10,000. If you collect $10,000 or more in sales tax, you file monthly. If it's under $10,000, you file quarterly. And I file quarterly, and only twice, actually last month was one, did I actually submit sales tax dollars, but most of them are zero, reported as zero. Here's the registry, the website for registering, getting registered for your sales tax. Again, this will be a clickable link, so you can just register. It doesn't cost anything to register to collect sales tax, but you do have to file quarterly, even if it's zero. And then you'll give you a sales tax certificate. Here's my certificate. And you'll get one of these. You can put it in a picture frame or keep it in an envelope. No worries, it just proves that you have it. Okay, our second intermission. Are there any questions right now?
Doesn't look like it. You're doing too good of a job.
I'm covering everything or putting people to sleep.
I have one real quick.
Sure.
It's Sandra Parker.
Hi.
What if you want to work not just in New Jersey, but perhaps in the tri-state area? I don't have a particular piece in mind. I used to do travel planning and consulting and tours.
Okay.
But I'm looking at this from a broader perspective. So is there insight if you want to be able to do your work in multiple cities or states?
Well, in general, there's not a problem. I have a client in Washington, D.C., a couple in Pennsylvania, and one in New York. And so there's not a problem working across states, even though you may be physically working yourself in New Jersey. But tell me a little bit more. Would you consider, is it you're going to be a travel agent or something like that? What is it you're thinking of doing?
Well, I was a travel agent. Right now, I'm looking at perhaps consulting on diversity training, programming, dealing with personnel training programs, things like that.
Okay.
Just have that sort of in my mind, possibly.
Yeah, I know a few people that do that. And yeah, there's no problem as far as I'm aware. You may need to speak to your own business attorney just to make sure, but as far as I'm aware, there's no problem with that. In New Jersey, I don't believe that's a taxable service, so you're not going to be collecting sales tax. I can tell you that if you had a taxable service, for instance, if you were sending somebody a product out of state, you may be obligated to pay the sales tax in the state of the user who's receiving it. But in terms of income, not a problem at all. Matter of fact, I write on my contracts that any disputes will be settled in the New Jersey courts. So just as a dot the I's and cross the T's, if I do have a client who, if I have a disagreement with, and I went to court for remediation, it would be in New Jersey. But
I like that.
Yeah, not a problem at all.
Not
that I'm aware of. Yep, go ahead.
One other quick piece. I'm sorry, everyone, but now you got me started.
That's what this time is for.
When you create, like I was thinking of expanding my work, if you will. I created the corporation, or I have a business, doing business as
Yeah.
certificate and so forth. But I had thought about expanding not just travel, but doing parties, or what am I trying to think of?
Event planning.
Special events.
Okay.
Because a lot of times the group travel I used to do was always associated with someone having some kind of gathering, like a birthday or a family reunion or something like that. So I was just wondering, if I branched off and had that as an element, would I have to create a separate or a new structure for the company, as opposed to?
So I'll answer it in two ways.
Okay.
Yes and no. From a corporate perspective, I don't believe you need to have multiple companies. Now, you may, upon speaking with an attorney, be advised to do it for certain tactical reasons, like you don't want to lose one business if you get sued in the other business, that kind of thing. But there's nothing that requires you to keep them separate. Similar to what you did, the DBA, or what's called a fictitious name, you can file for that as well. So you could be called the Sundra Parker Company, but you may want to call Exciting Travel or Excellent Events or whatever, doing business as, and that's fine. And so you do register the fictitious names if you want, just so that that's reserved, separate. But the other thing that becomes, you absolutely want to keep them separate, is your website. So as you have a business website, I would not at all suggest, this is putting my IT hat on, and I do a lot of this, I would not say have one website that supports your 2 or 3 business ventures when those 2 or 3 business ventures are different. Keep the websites separate. And it really has to do with brand credibility and keeping both your user base, your customers, not confused why you have these 3 businesses, and not Google, from a search engine optimization, being confused, where it says, well, here's this one website, but she's talking about 3 different things. How do I put this in a Google search result? So definitely have multiple websites so that the Google world and the customer world view you differently. The corporate side, you'd have to go through the pros and cons with your own business attorney or somebody else who can talk to your situation, your accountant maybe.
Thank you.
Yep. So yeah, it's funny. There are a lot of questions that it's a very simple 2 words. It depends. So that was one of those. Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions? Okay, so we will move on. So we talked about why we may want to be considered as a consultant. And now we talked about some of the structural parts about forming a consultant. And now let's talk about some of the other ways of becoming a consultant, having your business, not so much from the legal and structural side, but really the more public side of it. So how do you become a consultant? Now, if we were all in the room together, I would have you repeat after me, and this is what you would say. I am a consultant. That's it. That's all you need to do to say you're a consultant. You don't have to put your hand on a stack of Bibles and swear in front of a judge or anything like that. You just have to acknowledge that you're going to work as a consultant. Now, what you want to do is identify the niche where you have knowledge, experience, and support. So if this is a new venture for you, you're going to have to learn the business, certainly. But if it's taking your career from being an employee now to independent, you probably have a certain amount of professional knowledge and experience. But support is also the key thing. If you think about it, when you worked full-time for a company, if you ever had a challenge or a question that you didn't know the answer, you might speak with a coworker or your boss to get the answer. When you're independent, you don't always have that. So you have to build up your support network. It could be people you used to work with. It could be knowledge-based websites that you belong, or you just know you'll Google it. So just be aware that you understand what that niche is for you. Okay. Also, research your target market, because consultants, you can't be a generalist. You can't be all things to all people. It just doesn't work well that way. So you want to make sure that you have a target market of who you're going to serve in the area you're going to service, and that demonstrates where you are an expert. Also, begin to alert your network, your professional network. It could be through LinkedIn, it could be through coworkers, anywhere that you have a professional network. So do work through that as well, and let them know that you are starting to work as a consultant. And the reason why is they're going to start getting a little bit of interest. A few of them will contact you, be curious about what you're up to. They may even refer you, and you'll begin to get a little bit of references or people to talk to through your professional network. And develop a business plan. And this becomes very important. But what I'll tell you is there are really two types of business plans. And one is if you are someone who's going to be interested in going to the bank or going to venture capitalists and try and get some income or money, get funding, you're going to need a very well-developed business plan that's going to talk about what you're seeing your growth rate is going to be over the next 3 to 5 years, how you're going to generate business, and a whole bunch of factors that become very important. It may be very thick. It may be a small volume of dozens of pages or more. Or if you're not going to be going after money, but you're really, other than the income that you're going to generate, but you're not going after investor money or banks, really your business plan could be 1 page. And it begins to talk about things like your niche and your target market and where you're going to find experience and support when you need it, your type of customer, that you're going to use it to keep yourself focused. So in my case, my focus is primarily small businesses, typically under 20 people, and not-for-profit organizations. I don't go after bigger companies. Now, I have one client like that because someone found me and asked me to work with them, but I don't go after them. Why do I make sure I have that 1-page business plan? If I started to stray, why am I not getting business? Go back to the business plan and see, is it something that I've strayed from my business plan? So the 1-pager is perfectly fine, and have it somewhere handy or at least saved on your computer. So now that you are a consultant, right? You've raised your hand and said, I am a consultant. Name and create your company. And it could be simply just the name of your company. Or you may need to register it if that's something you're going to do. Now, register your web address as soon as you can, as fast as you can. This is really important. Now, it may be that you can wait until you register, until you create your website. You can wait to create your website, but don't wait to register your web address. We don't buy and own web addresses. We register them, we kind of rent them or lease them. Now, if you are really going to go down the path of registering your company with the state and filing as an LLC or a Corp, that's part of the public record, which is fine. And there are people that are squatters that regularly look at the public record of newly formed companies. And what they do is they go out and register web addresses. So if you were going to call yourself, the ABC Vending Company, and that's the way you're registered, and you knew that ABC Vending was available as a web address, get it right now, maybe the same day or before you register with the state. If not, a squatter may come along and decide to buy and register that web address. It only costs them about $10, $12, and they'll do that. And now you're at their mercy. You either have to pick a different web address or they'll buy it, they'll resell it to you at a profit. So don't do that. Register your web address right away. If you're choosing between 2 or 3 names, register 2 or 3 web addresses. When you settle on one, release the 2 that you don't need. They only cost $10 or $12. They're not very expensive when you get it through Google or some of the other companies. Some charge a little more, no big deal, but most you'll pay $20, $25. So not big money. So you might register 2 or 3 of them right up front and then only keep the one that's of most interest to you. Develop your professional support network. Make sure you know there are people you can contact when you have to do a job, but you realize there's something about it that you just don't know on your own. make sure you understand how to contact people. It could be online subscription services, former coworkers, doesn't really matter, but make sure you can answer your clients' questions and solve their requests of you. Now, you may also need certain licensing and certificates, and that goes down two paths. You don't need a license to have a business, so that's not what I'm talking about. Although, if you wanted to be an electrician or a plumber or in one of the trades, you may need a license for that, a state license. So check into if you need a state license or not. Most independent consultants don't need state licensing or certificates. However, there may be industry certificates that become important. For instance, maybe you've worked for 20 years managing projects, but you were never PMI certified. Now you're independent. It may pay for you to be PMI certified because you need to prove yourself to the outside world, to people that don't yet know you, and a certification kind of validates your experience and expertise. So look into it. And don't do this alone. Get advice from others. There are certainly your accountant, your lawyer, your insurance agent, former colleagues, friends, people that you know and trust. You'll contact them. And then there are organizations that will provide advice. SCORE provides free advice. The small business development centers provide free advice, training, classes, webinars. Sometimes they give you business mentors as well to get yourself started for free. So you may want to contact them, SCORE and small SBDC, as you're first contemplating starting a business. And then once you go down the path more seriously, you'll contact some of the other professionals. That may be a good strategy for you. And update your LinkedIn profile. Now that you're a consultant, put in LinkedIn a position that does not have an end date, right? Start date to present. And that way you'll have the 100% LinkedIn profile. Even if you don't have clients yet or completed projects, the bullet points in your LinkedIn profile for that company, your new company, can be your service offerings, the things that you do, your value proposition. Now, soon you will have business and you can put some of those in there as well, but those will have good keywords for people to hopefully find you in LinkedIn. And how to generate business. So now that you've got your consulting practice, you're going to want to generate business, of course. Find business networking groups. There are a bunch that are out there. There's BNI, they're a national organization with local chapters. LATIP does the same thing. There are others that are just local. I belong to two smaller groups that are local. And what's nice with these groups, the format is each of the members in any chapter are the only one of that job type. So you'll have only one marketing manager. You'll have one website designer. You might have 2 or 3 different lawyers if they're different practice areas, but you would have one business law attorney and one family law attorney. And the idea is with each of you being of different professions or lines of business within the group, the 15, 20, or 30 of you, you form and create your own referral network. So as an IT person, if someone came to me and needed a handyman, in one of my business groups is a handyman, and I've hired him myself a few times. He's really good. So I refer him to anyone in my network. So look for those. Join meetup.com. Meetup.com is not the world's largest dating website. That's not what Meetup is. Now, they probably have groups that are singles only groups, and that's fine. But with meetup.com, it's a website, it's completely free, and it's used to introduce you to other in-person groups. Now, to be fair, with COVID right now, a lot of these groups are now virtual and don't meet in person, but these are not only business groups. These could be professional groups, they could be personal groups. It could be that if you're interested in accounting, you might join a business accounting group to partner and meet other accountants. But you may also go to small business or entrepreneur groups to meet business people who are not accountants. Maybe they can be your future clients. And if you enjoy personal things like pets and gardening, join some of those groups because those people may also need an accountant or any other service, or they know people who do. Meetup is paid by the people who form the groups, but not the members. And what's nice is Meetup runs night and day, all day long, and it matches your profile to the profile of groups within your geography. So do create a robust profile, both personal and professional interests, and Meetup will send you an email and tell you, might be something like, There's a business networking group in Bridgewater. Go, don't go, that's up to you. Maybe you go and you don't like it. Don't go another time, but it'll introduce you. So meet business people and prospective business there. Join and participate in LinkedIn groups. LinkedIn is the #1 B2B platform. Facebook is the largest social media platform on the planet, but LinkedIn is the largest business-to-business platform. So if you're going to be marketing and working with a lot of business clients, you're going to want to be active in LinkedIn in those groups, both the professional-oriented ones and the personal-oriented ones. Attend professional associations and conferences. You typically see a lot of your quote-unquote competition there, but it's a great way to make other business and professional contacts. Maybe they have overflow. They need additional, some of these people are already established and are having too much work. Maybe they'll give you some overflow, or maybe you will. Maybe you'll need a partner to subcontract some work. So great ideas. And again, alert and activate your network. Let them know what you're up to, because your network put them to work for you as well. And be active on social media. Find the social media website that your customers use, or find the one where your competition, the types of people that you're competing against, they use. Be active there. You want to be where your clients and where your competitors are. You want to be where your competitors are because that's where your clients are going. And so you want to start to be active. If there's a bunch of them, just pick one. Just pick one and get started if you're new to social media. So one thing, what if I need health insurance? Now that I've started my business, I still need health insurance because I'm going to be the provider, the financial provider in the family. Well, health insurance is different types of insurance that pay for medical and surgery, sometimes dental, vision, and other things. That's what health insurance is. If you're self-employed, you actually can get insurance privately. Contact the local insurance company that sells in your state in New Jersey and see if they'll sell you a private policy. You'll generally get a policy. You can look for a policy with just the things you need. Unfortunately, this becomes usually the most expensive way to buy health insurance, but this could be one way to do it. Another way is get onto a group plan. Now, if you start having employees, you can average down the price of your health insurance because groups are generally less expensive than individual policies. Join professional associations. Some professional associations will offer a group policy for their members. And if there's no other professional association that you know of, join the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. They're kind of like a chamber of commerce, but they're not really. But among the things that they offer their members are lots of discounts of different services that you can use, of which one is health insurance. Membership of NJBIA is about $300 a year, but you can get a discount on health insurance, a discount on office supplies, discounts on shipping. They offer a lot of discounts. Go to the Healthcare Exchange, also known as the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. And technically, the Affordable Care Act is not insurance. A lot of people think it's insurance. It's really the laws that govern the insurance, and the insurance providers are going to be the big names that you hear of. There are 3 or 4 providers in New Jersey that conform to the Affordable Care Act. So go on the Healthcare Exchange. There's the website, healthcare.gov. Create an account, just takes a couple minutes, and then start shopping for the insurance based on what your need is going to be. And you'll have to talk with an insurance professional or others to help you understand, do you want to plan with a high deductible or a low deductible? Can you afford more insurance or less insurance? So that's up to you. But another place. If you're 65 years or older, you're eligible for Medicare. Medicare does not cover everything. You do need to speak with an insurance agent about that. There are supplemental plans as well. There are all different types of plans. I'm not savvy in this at all. So you would need to speak with an insurance representative who could talk to you about your specific needs. Now, if you have a family and any of the other family members are not 65, they are not eligible for Medicare. So if you're 65 and you have a spouse who's younger than 65 and still have children at home, they would still need insurance one of these other ways. But just be aware, Medicare is an option if you're 65 or older. And Cobra, if you are recently separated from your company, you may be able to get the exact insurance you have from your former company. Cobra will last, give or take, about 18 months. It can be expensive, but it could be an easy way to transition, keeping insurance. You may want to keep Cobra for a month or two until you figure out what's exactly right for you and then transition. So just be aware that's available as well. So in summary, consulting is an alternative to permanent employment. So permanent employment may no longer be available as easily as it was when you were younger, not just because of your age, although that is a factor, but also because of the way the marketplace is shifting from employment to contracting gigs. There are certainly pros and cons. Some of the pros, it is a resume gap filler. So even if you know one day you will get that full-time job, but that's what you're looking for, it will fill a gap. Remember, there's unemployment bias. So now you're not unemployed, you're a consultant. You may be able to develop new experience. You may even find yourself in new industries. And then for the period of time that you are a consultant, you may get paid more. It's not uncommon at all to get paid, and it may lead to a contract to hire position. I know in the early part of the 2000s, I brought in 1, 2, 3 consultants, but when the project was over, we hired one of them. And even though I lost my job there with that company in 2012, he stayed there until he retired earlier this year. So it worked out very well for him. You don't need to have a company or become an LLC, but you can, and there can be benefits to doing that. And then when you're ready, you declare, I am a consultant, and you get yourself started. So that is our program on how to work as a consultant in the gig economy.